So today we're going to talk about 360 productions and 360 videos, 360 cameras, everything that's 360. This is going to be an overall look on how the project workflows and also maybe some kind of basic introduction on how to actually think about 360 productions and maybe even overall normal video productions. So 360 videos has this kind of component that it gives the viewer the opportunity to be immersed on the video, so it can be immersed in the story, which is very, very powerful. And it has the opportunity to make the viewer look wherever they want, because it's 360, right? You can see everything. So in that sense, there's some kind of something that you really need to think about in like, let's say, more artistic wise. For example, if you cannot control where the viewer is going to look, how do you make sure that the viewer is actually looking at where you want them to look? This is it's a very, very important question here. So how do you make sure that the viewer is getting the experience that you want them to have? So there's this question about attention control. So how do you manipulate the viewer to look where you want them to look? Of course, there's ways to do this. We can talk about dynamic lights, like just some flickering on the back maybe draws attention. We can talk about movement. The actor can just simply move around and the viewer is compelled to actually look at him. That's one way to do it. Of course, the story can also be compelling in that sense. Sound is very important as well. If you get like some sort of sound cue that it kind of gets your attention, maybe you want to look there, and maybe that makes the viewer look there. So you cannot control exactly where the viewer is going to be watching, but you can plan so that the viewer can voluntarily, or at least he thinks it's voluntary, looks where you want it to look. So this is kind of like this very subjective, and kind of really depends on the project and on the story and all sorts of stuff in that sense. But it's something that you really need to think about in how do you have control on where the viewer is watching. Planning your production is the utmost more important thing you can do. There's a lot of things you can do to plan it. Mostly it's about the space. You need to think about the space. Where is the camera? Where are the actors? What's the story? This is key elements that you have to think about. And the more you plan, the more time saving it becomes when you go to post-production. So you have to think about it. How do you want the audience to actually see your video? And remembering that this is a 360 video, the audience can look anywhere. So it's not like regular video that you can show this and then show that. No, you show everything. And then the audience has the interactive way to actually look where they want to look. Now VR is a thing. There's a lot of VR goggles and quite cheap prices these days. So the experience of having a VR video being somewhere else, the total immersion that you can get from that experience, it's really quite something, and it's something that storytellers should really be aware of. It's a very, very nice way to transport the audience somewhere. So 360 cameras. So there's a lot of 360 cameras now on the market these days. It's an evolving technology, really. And there's a lot of cameras. There's a lot of options out there. There's different software, different firmware. There's a lot of options for your production, 360 production. So just a general way to explain how it works. So different cameras have different lenses. Some have 2 lenses, 4, 6 lenses, 8 lenses, depends. So the way that it works, it combines all the lenses from all the sensors that it has, and it merges them into one singular image. So what we're talking about here is how to represent a sphere in a flat screen. So if you think about a sphere as a 360 sphere, you can look all the way around you, and we need to represent that on a flat screen so we can work on it. Just to get an overall sense of what is like a representation of a sphere on a flat screen, we can think about it as the Mercator world map. You can think about it, we've all seen it. It represents the world, our planet, and it is a flat screen. So that's how we can represent a sphere on a flat screen. For video, we use basically that same technique. It's called an equirectangular image. So it's 2 by 1. 2 by 1. So it gives the possibility for the software to wrap around and make that sort of sphere that we want. So the way we do that is that using all those different lenses and all those sensors capturing, we merge them, and how we do that, we stitch them. So we need to stitch all the images from all the lenses into that. So there's quite a few ways to do that. Some cameras do it automatically in camera, but if you really want full control on that, you really need some kind of software to actually work on it and have more control. There's quite a few. I'm just going to mention the Insta360 Stitcher, because Insta360 it's kind of one of the big names on the 360 cameras right now. And of course Mystica VR, that really gives you full control on where and how do you want the stitch to happen. So just beware that the stitching is kind of something that it might distort the image somehow. So for example, if the camera is too close to you and the stitch is right in the middle of your face, it will distort your face. So the further away you are from the camera, the less stitching you will notice on the final product. So besides the calibration that you need to do for the stitching, you also need to remember some other details about this 360 productions. As I was saying, so there's like different lenses, so you stitch them all together, but you have to remember, because it's a 360 and it's a sphere, it can go all around. So you have to think about as well, if there's movement in the camera, you have to think about the gyro calibration. So gyroscopic, it's a term that you might have heard of, most of the smartphones have nowadays. Also these cameras also have it, so it's a way that they make it so that you can have the same camera with the movement, and the horizon stays consistent. How do you monitor what the camera is seeing? Because it's 360. There are ways to do that, of course, but there's always some kind of delay on what the camera is seeing and what you're getting on, for example, some goggles or even some smartphone. There's always some delay on that. You also have to think about resolution. You have to think about the resolution of the apparatus that it's going to be replaying the video that you made. And of course this is quite subjective, because it can be in YouTube and it can be in Oculus Quest, for example. So there's quite some difference there on the resolution that you can make. So on that sense, I would say that always record with the maximum resolution that the equipment can afford, and then you can switch it over and treat it later on the computer. Reminder, of course, that this really needs a beefy computer. I mean, some of these cameras do 8K and 11K or even 16K maybe. So this really needs a beefy computer so you can like work on it, work on the stitch, work on the cuts, and of course you can actually have a nice experience as well editing the video, because that's also important. So on the production, as I mentioned before, there's a lot of things involved. There's the actors, the story, the decor, the all sorts of things that you have to think about. But more, I would say, like more technically now, you have to think about, for example, a simple thing like, well, the camera needs power. The power has a cord, and the cord will be showing, for example, or the camera is on a tripod. The camera is on a tripod, and because it's 360, the tripod's going to show. Of course, the main thing that we can think about it is just mask it out. Just use After Effects, Photoshop, some software like that. Mask it out, mask out what you don't need, or mask in what you want it to be there. That's also a possibility. But just beware that when you are recording, that if there is a specific thing that you're going to add in post, just be aware that it needs a place to be. So again, this 360 production, it's really much about the space, where to put the stuff. This is what you need to think about. Where to put the camera, the actors, everything. So you kind of need to plan it very well and very carefully. So as you can see, there's a lot of similarities between 360 video and normal videos, but there are some very particular issues that we need to